For years, people from around the world have been drawn to the Hawaiian Islands to experience firsthand their warmth and beauty. During the 60s, surfers worldwide labeled Hawaii as the place for the sport of surfing. Since then, the Hawaiian Islands have become one of the most popular locations for recreation and competition, and is now the home of one of the most popular amateur bicycle competitions in the world. Stay with us as Bank of America presents the Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic from Oahu, Hawaii. And welcome to Hawaii for the Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. I'm your host, Todd Harris. Joining me today is my colleague, Phil Leggett. Phil, we are underway of this four-discipline Cycle Classic with the Dole time trials already done. The riders still have 3 grueling disciplines to go.
Yeah, they have, Todd. This race here is actually seeing every aspect of long-distance cycle racing. Next up is the road race, where all the riders start together, and that's just under 100 miles. Then we have the hill test, and that is 8 miles, where again it's a very steep mountain here on the islands of Hawaii. And then we finish off with the circuit race down in downtown Waikiki Beach, and down there we're going to see them race over 42 miles. So every facet of cycle racing is on the agenda. And we have some great racers here, Olympic champions as well as world champions. They are representing 13 national teams. Who do you look for to win the overall individual as well as the team title? As you say, Todd, it really is a superb field, this, but I think the Polish men are the men to beat. They're on good form. Tomasz Brozyna is the leader at the moment after yesterday's stage, and then we look to his teammates like Dariusz Baranowski and Piziks. They're the 3 boys from Poland, but look to Germany. The world champion is there, Jan Ullrich, and look to the English too in Mark McRae. He's looking for a good performance. And there's 1 or 2 riders who are leaving the amateur ranks this week and be professional next season, like Servais Knaven of Holland. These are the men we should see at the thick of the action. All right, next up is the Bank of America road race, but first let's have a look at the course. The competition begins on Oahu's windward coastline. From there, the peloton will snake its way along the home of big wave surfing, Oahu's North Shore. The pack continues through Haleiwa and into the pineapple and sugarcane fields before looping back to Haleiwa for the sprint to the finish. The racers are making some last-minute preparations, and we'll be back with more right after this. The Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic is being brought to you by Bank of America and by Outrigger Hotels Hawaii and by Dollar Rent-A-Car. Welcome back to the 1993 Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. Sea Life Park is where we began the road race. We had 65 survivors who would take part in this race today. A big day for them as well as the organizers.
It was to be an important test day too for the Hawaiian police, and they'd come out in force to ensure safety, not just for the riders in the new Tour of Hawaii, but also for the other road users. The yellow jersey was at stake for the man who could win today, and Tomasz Brozyna was the rider they were aiming for after his win in the time trial yesterday. He'd ridden so well in that time trial and taken 40 points for the victory. Now there were others concentrating on the second discipline of this race, the road race.
With 155 kilometers separating them from the finish, they took off in absolute beautiful sunshine.
But you know, the weather here on the island of Hawaii can change very, very quickly. And literally around the corner, you can hit a wind or indeed a rainstorm. And the riders would feel both before the day would end. No one was in any hurry to set the pace, certainly not the Polish riders. They were quite happy to ride near their leader and hoped that everybody else was quite happy to ride near him.
But it was time to say goodbye to the sea lions and seals of Sea Life Park as they made their way around the windward side of the island as they concentrated on the $24,000 of prize money that awaited them at the finish line.
Cycle racing at this level around the islands of Hawaii have never been seen before, and it was very soon that the riders were quickly into their stride.
However, this was the easy portion of the race, as the Hawaiian racers can attest. They knew what grueling ascents and treacherous descents lie ahead. They've raced close to 200 races on these island courses throughout the year, but they've never raced with this kind of competition before.
2 sprints, the order of the day, 2 mountain climbs, all giving points towards the race leader's yellow jersey.
Remember, the important thing about this race is it's not decided on time like most stage races. It is indeed decided on points. There's 40 points for the man who wins today, but out on the mountain climbs, there's 6 points for the first man over the top, down to 1 point for the fifth rider over the top. For the sprint, it's only slightly different. The winner there gets 4 points, the fourth rider gets 1. The sprints were coming very shortly, and the riders would start their sprints at the town of Arula after 38 miles. The two climbs would come near the end, at 58 miles or 87 kilometers, and at 86 miles or 138 kilometers.
At this point in the race, however, the pace was still very relaxed as the riders were taking in more of the scenery that Hawaii had to offer. And for the Hawaiian riders in particular, they were enjoying their time riding with some of the world-class riders that had come to Hawaii.
Obviously, the pace is going to be pretty hard. I think everyone still wants to race. Should be fun.
And that was the voice of 6-time Hawaiian champion Steve Dela Cruz. And this was the world champion, 19-year-old Jan Ullrich, taking on board plenty of fluid for the long day ahead, but in fact he wouldn't see the finish.
The yellow jersey which Tomasz Brozyna of Team Poland wore sat near the back of the peloton, and that would prove to be a mistake as the pack headed for the climb on the Pali Highway.
Pace was now being set by the big Irishman, Declan Lonergan from Waterford. In the slipstream was the top Dutch rider, soon to be a professional, Servais Knaven. And then onto the climb on the Pali Highway, and the rain, sure enough, was there. Declan Lonergan setting the pace, while at the back, number 30 here, Rolf Schmidt, Germany, was losing ground. At first he clearly had gear troubles, but it was far more serious than that. He suffered with sickness ever since he crashed 2 weeks ago in the race in Australia. He was to drop out in the next 3 or 4 kilometers.
The riders had another encounter waiting in front of them as they left Pali Highway to go to Old Pali Highway. Now this is a road that is not used by motorists anymore, and that was made evident because the road was covered with green moss, which made things very treacherous.
The riders climbed steadily, led up the hill by Paul Williams of Australia, a rider who has surprised when he was in Australia last week and was surprising again this time. He was climbing better than he's ever climbed before. Now, in most cycle races, the attacks would come on the way up or on the flat roads. But the fearless or the foolish were now setting such a pace on the descent, they were forcing a leading group.
Leading that charge was Ireland's Declan Lonergan, followed closely by America's George Hincapie. When we come back, more racing from Hawaii. Welcome back to the Bank of America Road Race. These are highlights of Stage 2, and that is our current leader, Declan Lonergan, who led that treacherous descent down the Old Pali Highway. He was joined by 13 other riders, and between the 14 of them, these riders would take this course apart.
The notable absentee, yesterday's time trial winner and race leader, Tomasz Brozyna of the Polish team. He had been caught in the second chase group and was trying to organise now a group of 12 riders to bring back the 14 escapees. There were in this leading group 3 Australian riders, 3 from Canada, 1 from England, 2 from Ireland, and 4 from the USA. The best placed in this breakaway group 2 was the American rider Scott Mercer. Mercer was 3rd overall. The second rider overall, Chris Carlson, had punctured and was a long way behind the field. A touch of wheels and Mark McRae falls at the back of the group. He had in fact clashed there with a Canadian rider, but he was soon up and with the service on hand was quickly pushed back into the race.
The riders were now over their climb as they made their descent back down to the coastline, and at that point they would hold their position until the next climb of the race.
The lead over the second group behind, which was also breaking up under the pressure, was approximately 1.5 minutes. Into the narrow section now at Waimea Park. The breakaway was still going very strong indeed, but just around the corner, you never know what will happen. The breakaway was down to 13 riders. 1 rider had been dropped, Chann McRae, dropped by the feeding station and passed by everybody else as well. He really had hit the wall. There were others in trouble too, like Dominique Perras of Canada, but for the other 12 riders, they seemed to be settling down quite well.
The lead pack of 13 now had a 2-minute gap over the rest of the riders, and the pole's absence was an American's gain.
Scott Mercer had had a tremendous day so far. He'd won the special sprint at Hawai and picked up 4 points. He'd won the first mountain climb and taken 2. And at Hawaii, where the race would finish, he'd also won the sprint there and taken 4 points. He was now the leader of this race on the road. And there was still, of course, the big sprint finish to come.
On the last hill climb of the day, however, Britain's Mark McRae, a rider who fell earlier in the race, would take the lead. He would push it all the way with only Marty Jemison on his tail, but he would soon lose him as well.
Mark McRae had gone out and wrecked the course the day before. He had felt he wasn't strong enough to win this race in the sprint, so he had to attack and break clear and gain time before the top of the final climb of the day. He was waiting for no one.
The remainder of the lead pack, once 14 riders strong, was now scrambling for some sort of unity, and it was left to Declan Lonergan of Ireland to find some type of tempo.
Mark McRae, the elastic had snapped, was now going clear of the field. 45 seconds was the gap.
After traveling 146 kilometers, Mark McRae was showing the pain of all that travel plus an accident. But back in the lead pack, there was action once again.
John Harris was setting the pace. Rob McEwen was there, Paul Williams, then an attack by Henk Vogels, the other Australian. Vogels, the aggressive youngster, and then for the sprint finish, through comes the Scott Mercer, the leader there, and clearly knocks Vogels off his bike, although Vogels looked to his left and did appear also to move a little bit closer to the American. It was probably 50% on each side. Vogels was up, but would not regain the leaders this day. Scott Mercer went over the top of the climb, just behind McRae by 46 seconds, and just behind also Rob McEwen.
Scott Mercer would pick up 3 more points as he moved relentlessly towards the day's yellow jersey.
There was now just 8 riders left in the group behind, chasing the lone leader, Mark McRae of the England team. McRae was over the worst of the course now, and this had shattered a very, very classy field indeed. McRae was now riding towards victory, and without doubt, his finest victory of the year, and some would say his best victory ever.
But the race wasn't over for second. We'll have the finish after this. Welcome back to the highlights of the 1993 Bank of America road race. This is our current leader at this point with Mark McRae. Todd Harris along with Phil Liggett, and these riders were working with just their reserves left, not enough to catch our leader, Mark McRae.
Thankfully, the flatter roads were now with the riders and the pine fields were all around them. This, of course, is the pine field capital.
But Mark McRae was thinking about the finish line, which he was about to cross, and he had worked hard for this victory, coming from a fall all the way back to win this road race.
The view of the course the day before had certainly paid off. In the sprint for second place, it was the Irish rider in second place here for the moment, Declan Lonergan, who again produced a superb finish, just like he had done to win the last stage of the Bank Classic in Australia in Canberra.
Rounding out the top 4, it was McRae, Lonergan of Ireland, Baranowski from Latvia, and Demir from Canada. Phil spoke with our winner.
Mark, a well-taken win, but how did you get away from the group?
Our manager, Sandy, took us around the course yesterday, so we knew basically where all the attacking points were. What with a climb, 10 miles to go, it seemed ideal for me, especially with a bunch of sprinters there. So.
Now, you've seen, Mark, race courses all around the world, but have you ever seen one quite like this one?
It's different. It was nice to go off the main road every now and again. It stopped the crosswinds sort of sorting us out a bit. We went up a few mossy climbs and down a few mossy descents, so it was interesting.
Well, Mark, you've got the win you came for in the South Pacific. You missed out in Australia, or you had a high overall finish over there. Now you've had your stage win here. Plans to be a professional next year?
Yeah, I'm getting on a bit now. I'm 26, so I'd like some sort of contract. The States, I've been over the States before. It seems to suit me, but I'm looking for anything anywhere really.
Congratulations to Mark McRae of Team England, who overcame this horrific fall in the middle of the race to come back and win the first running of the 1993 Bank of America Cycle Classic, this being the road race. Mark McRae in grand fashion, winning, followed by Lonergan, Baranowski, Demir, and Scott Mercer in 5th place. But it is Scott Mercer who will now wear the yellow leader's jersey. He will be followed by Declan Lonergan, Paul Williams, Mark McRae, and Poland's Tomasz Brozyna. And after 2 stages, the team competition looks like this. USA number 2 in the lead, followed by Poland, Australia number 2, Canada, and England in the top 5. We have shifted shores from the east and north shore to the south shore. Todd Harris along with Phil Leggett, and we're here today for the LTU hill climb.
Yes, Todd, this is a very different type of cycle race now. In fact, there's only one cycle race quite like it in the world, and that's in Spain at the end of each season. It's a mass start race of a mountain, and the riders now must be technically aware of what it means. They've trained on the course, they've learned every bend, and the leaders of this tour must now mark each other very, very closely. Crucially, they must choose the right gear ratios now, otherwise their legs will simply explode before they get to the top.
And this is the 3rd discipline of this classic. With the change of disciplines, who do we look for?
Well, obviously you look for a mountain climber, the man they call the angel of the mountains, who can ride very, very well, ride low gears and pedal very quickly and conserve his energy on the way up. I'd go for somebody from Poland, possibly, and certainly Scott Mercer, who leads this race. He must now go for the challenge.
Mercer would have his work cut out for him on this beautiful but difficult LTU International Airways hill climb course. The race started appropriately at the Bank of America on Alakea Street in Honolulu and became a 20-kilometer ascent up Mount Tantalus to the finish at the scenic Pu'u'ualaka'a State Park.
From the helicopter, the view of the survivors of this 4-day race, a race which to them has been rather surprising. First of all, a time trial, then a long-distance road race, now the hill climb, and still to come, the closed circuit, very fast short sprint race. And as soon as the pace car drew clear, there was one rider anxious to see the hill first. Clayton Stevenson, who competed in the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games for Australia. And really not a climber. And joined by Bob Rasenberg there, who is also not a great climber. They wanted to steal a march over the rest of the field.
The yellow jersey, the leader's jersey, was being worn by American Scott Mercer. His objective in the day was simple: to keep an eye on those riders who were in the individual standings close to him, that being Declan Lonergan, Paul Williams, Tomasz Brozyna, and Mark McRae.
As with the other 2 stages, 40 points going to the winner, 1 point for the 30th rider over the line. Nothing for anybody else. Servais Knaven in the lime jersey there, coming up to the front. This great talent from Holland, who has really not featured at all in this 4-day race. The riders were now on the very steep beginning of a climb, which would only have a short respite coming soon over the top of this short sprint up here. It is something like 26%, and the riders were soon in trouble. Some of the world's finest cyclists were being reduced to the embarrassment of walking. Declan Lonergan, the Irishman, number 41, in desperate trouble. So too was Ian Gilkes of the England team. And on the far side of the road, 3rd placed overall Paul Williams had his chain off. A disastrous beginning for him.
The current leader at this point was Servais Knaven from Holland. He used that rapid hill climb to separate himself from the rest of the pack. But as the weather changed, each rider had difficult times. They would go from heavy rains and downpours to hot, humid sunshine burning into their backs. But at this point, it didn't seem to bother Servais Knaven.
They were now leaving the beautiful suburbs of Honolulu and beginning to get into the thin air some 500 meters above sea level. Scott Mercer, to the right of our picture, was riding a very good race. He was staying at or near the front. The pace was being set now by Thomas Lisa, the former German world champion. And this was surprising. Lisa really is not noted as a climber.
Right behind Lisa was Dainis Ozols of Latvia. The Latvian team was still looking for a stage victory from their training periods in the South Pacific.
3rd place, Jan Roos, for 6 days, the leader of the Pacific Power Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic. He was in 3rd place. But again, the big surprise with the pacemaking now of Thomas Lisa. And Paul Williams was fighting back.
What happened? A couple of riders fell in front of me, and I had to stop on the steep section.
Williams from Australia, who was 3rd overall in the individual overall point standings, now found himself with a huge challenge. He was well in the back of the pack, no one to draft off of, and as the rains continued to fall, he had his work cut out for him, trying to make his way back to the front of the pack.
The way to ride this mountain is to try and stay near the front as long as possible without putting in too much of an early effort. But that didn't seem to be the attitude of Dainis Ozols from Latvia. With still a considerable way to go, he attacked the field.
Welcome back to Hawaii in the Bank of America Tour of Hawaii. We return to the LTU hill climb with Latvian rider Dainis Ozols in the lead.
There was still a sizable group trying to hunt down Danish Ozols, and in this group was Tomasz Brozyna, Chmielewski of Poland, Piziks, another Latvian, Lisa, and the race leader too in the yellow jersey, Scott Mercer. Mercer really was rising to the occasion.
From the heights of Mount Tantalus, you get a beautiful view of downtown Honolulu. But for riders like Henk Vogels, there was little interest in the scenery, because he knew, as well as the Polish rider Dariusz Baranowski, that there was still a grueling climb ahead.
The Polish team were locked together in a duo battle with the American team for the overall team race prize. But for the individual prize, that was still very wide open, because now there was a new man imposing himself on this race, Dainis Ozols. Riding very steadily up the climb, he sees his teammate, Ullrich, who retired yesterday. A final word of encouragement before the last slopes begin. Honolulu was now a long way below the riders in the Tour of Hawaii, and the view was absolutely stunning for those with the time to watch. Ozols was giving a magnificent display now. This is probably the hardest type of race to ride, an explosive, powerful start, straight into the hill, and no time to warm up. And Ozols was clearly the best man on the day.
Dainis Ozols from Latvia continued to push the last few meters up the side of Mount Tantalus, which stands approximately 2,600 feet high. And he knew, with just a few turns left, he was not far from the finish line.
The rain was back again, and Ozols was checking just to see who was chasing. And it was Tomasz Brozyna who was coming up behind him very, very quickly indeed. But around the final hairpin bend and a shout from the Latvian team manager, at last he got what he wanted, a home win for the Latvian riders, their first ever stage victory in the South Pacific. Ozols now, despite the fatigue, was climbing well indeed. They call these men the angels of the mountains, and for the man who was about to win, no one could deny him that. Dainis Ozols crosses the finishing line, a time of 20 minutes and 44 seconds for the 14-kilometer climb. And Tomasz Brozyna of Poland just 13 seconds behind, coming over in second place. Then another gap, but the Polish riders were having a great day. And then it was their top climber, Piotr Chmielewski, who came over in third place, his time 21 minutes and 8 seconds. Followed by Arvis Piziks of Latvia, then the sprint, Scott Mercer beating Thomas Lisa for fifth slot.
So the American Scott Mercer does enough to maintain his overall lead in the individual standings, but today it was Dainis Ozols, the LTU hill climb champion, here in Hawaii at this first ever Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. Many people turned out despite the weather conditions to see Dainis Ozols atop the stand with Tomasz Brozyna of Poland and Piotr Chmielewski. So the results of this stage: Ozols, Brozyna, Chmielewski, Piziks, and Scott Mercer in fifth place. Our team standings after 3 stages look like this: Poland, USA, England, Latvia, and Canada. So maintaining his overall lead, Scott Mercer receives a new yellow leader's jersey, and he will receive the traditional Hawaiian lei as we take a look at our overall individual standings. Scott Mercer atop the board, followed by Brozyna, Lonergan, McKay, and Ozols.
Scott, is it fair to say that the hill climb is not your strongest point, and you've pulled out a very good ride today?
Well, yeah, it's not my strongest point, but I'm an all-around rider, and I was climbing really well yesterday. I was climbing really well in Australia, finishing with Baranowski on a lot of the climbs. So I've come along real well with my climbing. I've dropped, probably a pound or 2 with the stage race, and that helped a lot.
Well, a 5th place, and you'll stay in yellow. And what was your tactic on the climb? Were you particularly watching any particular man?
I basically wanted to finish the top 5. Would have been nice to win it, because there's a possibility that I could have clinched the stage race completely with this race, and that was kind of my goal, so I wouldn't have to worry about the criterium. But the criterium, I don't think it'll be much of a problem, unless it's raining really bad, and anything can happen.
Up next, the 4th and final stage of the Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Classic. Welcome back to this, the 4th stage of the Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. Todd Harris along with Phil Liggett. Phil, we are down to the final conclusion, the final discipline, the criterium. Very exciting, and how does it work?
Well, criterium is a French word. It means closed circuit race over a short course, and this course is just on half a mile around. The riders cover it 35 times. It's usually a battle of the sprinters, Todd, the men who've got the nerve to stay up at the front of the race all the time.
All right, with this battle, though, who do we look for to win it all?
We go look to Scott Mercer now. He's worried only about the Irishman Declan Lonergan and the Polish rider Tomasz Brozyna, and if he keeps those two under control, he should run out the winner.
Olympic and world champions here racing today. Let's have a look at the course. And while there will be lots of sprinting going on in this criterium, there's a lot of turns as well. They'll be carrying heavy speeds into those turns. It'll be important for these riders to master their bikes going through the turns and taking very good care. And we are all about set, ready for the gun to start this.
The riders are away, and this is the final circuit now, the fourth stage of the Tour of Hawaii, which is coming to a highly successful conclusion. Especially for the rider from the United States, who hopes now, Scott Mercer, to defend his lead. The yellow jersey he took on the second stage, and he took that away from the Polish rider who's tracking him at the moment, Tomasz Brozyna.
So it's up to Scott Mercer to keep all things under control as they attack this 35-lap criterium course, just over 40K total. And talking with some of the riders, they've really enjoyed their downtime here on the Hawaiian Islands.
And the riders, I'm sure, will be thinking as they go out on this opening lap of the pleasures of the beach just off their right shoulder here.
Across the right foot.
At the start, Jeremy Hunt of the England team taking them away. The tactics now of the yellow jersey, Scott Mercer, will be to keep a very close eye on the pole in second place, Declan Lonergan in third, Mark McKay of England in fourth, and Dainis Ozols, the rider who won the climb up the mountain. He's also equal fourth place with 67 points. There's 40 points, as always, available for the winner today, and the 30th place takes only one.
And we might want to point out, Phil, that this is not an easy course here at Kapiolani Park. It's just outside of the Honolulu Zoo. Quite treacherous, a lot of speed, a lot of hairpin turns. And for Scott Mercer, there's a lot of pressure on him to make sure he stays towards the top pack.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of pressure because the race is on points, and so you can't just you can't just make sure you with the top group. You got to make sure you finish with finish in the top few places.
Will you try to map out who has the ability of striking distance of taking the overall lead from you and make sure they stay behind you?
Yeah, we'll make sure we know everybody within 40 points.
And there we see Scott Mercer on the left with the yellow jersey, currently running in third, and he did very well in the road race, taking fifth, extremely well in the time trials, and very well in the hill climb.
Now Mercer is going to make sure and keep a very close eye on Tomasz Brozyna. Polish rider, by the way, wears number 54, but Bob Rasenberg trying to get away very early on, hoping now the pressure is off him. He lost time yesterday and points, so he's not a challenger for final victory. He's not a man that Scott Mercer will react to. And I can tell you that this rider usually wins on his trips abroad at this time of the year. He's had 15 wins this year around his native country of Holland. But a little bit disappointed he hasn't managed to pull off a win either when he was in Australia for the 9-day race down the Eastern Pacific coastline, and again so far here as well.
So it's Bob Rasenberg pushing the pace, trying to get the ball rolling here on the last stage of this Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. And here's where the tactics come into play. It'll be interesting to see if anyone chases him down or if they just decide to let him go. No threat.
No reaction. And if it's going to come, it won't come from Scott Mercer, because you see now the tactics are coming into play here. Rasenberg is no threat to the leaderboard, and Scott Mercer sees 40 points going up the road here. That's what he would get if he won, Bob Rasenberg, which would mean that Mercer will stop the Polish rider, Brozyna, taking those valuable 40 points.
And Brozyna is Mercer's main concern right now. Mercer leading by 19 points, so he will keep the Polish rider somewhere behind him. And I'm sure Scott Mercer, Phil, will have a lot of help from his fellow Team USA riders, both Team 1 and Team 2. They will want to give their team member the overall victory, so they will do their part in pulling in anyone that offers any kind of threat to Scott Mercer's overall lead. But right now, it's Bob Rasenberg, our leader.
Rasenberg, the king of the criteriums, that's what they call them in France, these circuit races. And he, as well as many of the Dutch riders, is a specialist at this type of racing. It's short, it's very fast, it's an entertaining type of racing because the public here can watch the riders virtually all the way around the course of 1.2 kilometers. And it looks as though the Latvia team are trying to get on terms here with Bob Rasenberg.
But as Bob Rasenberg continues to lead this U.S. Sprint Criterium, we will be back with more of the first annual Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic right after this. And Welcome back to Hawaii. Todd Harris along with Phil Liggett, and we are well into the U.S. Sprint Criterium race.
And the yellow jersey of Scott Mercer has moved up into 4th place. Now that should send alarm bells ringing with Tomasz Brozyna and Declan Lonergan, because they really have got to ride close to Mercer, and they've got to try and beat him too by a number of finish positions because of the points differential. 19 points for the pole against Scott Mercer. Paul Williams back in control at the front.
Paul Williams of Australia, a very strong Criterium rider, usually places in the top 10.
And coming through very tight on his wheel, Francois Villeneuve of Canada. Now Francois has the lead. And Mark McKay, the rider who won so well stage 2, the long road race, up into 3rd place. John Harris, the New Zealand rider who's guesting on the Irish team, he's in 4th spot. Some very strong riders now forcing their way up into the leaderboard.
And Scott Mercer looks as if he is in the top 10 as we see his yellow jersey go by. What he needs to do is maintain that top 10 standing, and that will ensure him at least a tie for the overall championship and get him to the victory stand. Let's take a look back at the Dole time trials where Mercer started his assault on the victory stand. The first racer in the Dole time trials event was Australian Robert Crowe. His would be the difficult job to try and set a pace on the course that the 64 riders behind him would be unable to beat. Unfortunately for Crowe, his time was quickly bettered. The Dole time trials course looked out over the waters of Mokulea Beach and surrounding Dillingham Airfield and Glider Port. Riders would ride on the beachfront to the first turnaround, retrace their tracks, and circle around Dillingham Airfield to the second turnaround and the final leg of the course, a total of 15 kilometers.
The next big man to start that all eyes were turned on was Piotr Chmielewski of Poland. This was the rider who had won the King of the Mountains competition and has 3 times won the Tour of Poland itself. The 23-year-old Pole was setting a good time. He was already ahead of Paul Williams by a few seconds. He'd caught the Latvian rider Arvis Piziks for 1 minute as well.
Chmielewski in the lead with a time of 19.40 would give Team USA's Matt Kuchera a chance to prove his mettle and take Team Poland's lead.
Christian Zajel of Poland wasn't having such a good day for the Polish team. He was being caught now by Matt Kuchera. Kuchera's time checks were almost exactly the same as the Polish rider Chmielewski.
At the finish, Kuchera edged out Chmielewski by the narrowest of margins, only to be outdone by this man.
The former champion of Germany, Thomas Lisa, a hot favourite amongst the riders to set the best time, prepared for his start. Big legs of Thomas Lisa, a former winner 2 years ago of the Pacific Power Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic and a stage winner this year as well, was now trying to make his mark on the island of Hawaii. Lisa was going extremely quickly on the straight roads. At times he was clocking speeds of 53 kilometers an hour. By the finish he was just 3 seconds better than Kuchera and Chmielewski, finishing with a time of 19 minutes 37 seconds.
Yeah, that's my special discipline, but we have to wait for the last rider. I was starting under the first 20 and I gave my best. I'm not in best conditions, but I gave my best. It's a bit windy, I like that. So, the man with the most power will win, I think.
The riders continued to arrive thick and fast, but no one was approaching the time of Thomas Lisa's 19 minutes and 37 seconds. Darren Lawson almost did it, arriving to the start line. He was only just in time. Lawson too would finish down the field in 17th place with a time of 20 minutes and 34 seconds. Then came the turn of the Polish rider Tomasz Brozyna, twice third overall in the Commonwealth Bank Classic these past 2 years and third in the famous Peace Race in Central Europe. He caught in all 3 riders on his way to the finish. All that remained now was to see exactly how quick he had travelled over the 14 kilometres course. He was still thinking of the time of Lisa, 19 minutes and 37 seconds. By the time he came up to the line, he was just fractionally better. The new leader of the race with a time of 19 minutes and 22 seconds. One man who felt he could challenge him was Chris Carlson of the United States, a member of the team time trial squad that didn't make selection for the World Championships in Norway. Out on the course, Carlson too was riding extremely quickly. He was passing riders as well and setting a time that was very, very close out on the course to that of Brozyna.
race finish, Carlson would take the second spot, 0.04 of a second behind the leader, while teammate Scott Mercer would give him a run for the money. Mercer did extremely well on the course and pushed the pace, coming in only 0.06 off the lead, enough for third place. So the final results of the dual time trials: Brozyna, Carlson, Mercer, Lisa, and Matt Kashara. And we are back to the U.S. Sprint Criterium here at Kapiolani Park in Hawaii. Phil Liggett along with Todd Harris, our current leader Bob Resenberg, the Dutch rider, followed by Vermeer, Carlson, our overall leader Mercer, Baranowski, and Brozyna, and that rounds out the top 6.
The men that really matter, the men that have dictated this race, these 4 stages, are now coming to the fore in the race to try and keep the control right up to the end.
And any rider who is still in contention for the overall individual title will definitely be in this lead pack. As they continue to push the pace, you will not want to be dropped from this group. That will be the end of your race. They will continue to push the pace and push the speed. And as we see on the right-hand side, it looks like Declan Lonergan, one of the top 3 riders who Mercer definitely will keep his eye on, is starting to make a break and see if he can break away from the pack.
Now, this is a good attack now. If Declan can put this one, this will draw the sting of Scott Mercer for sure. The yellow jersey will not want Declan Lonergan to go. He's 3rd overall in this race. He's 35 points off the win, which is a tough order for him, because Scott Mercer knows that he only has to finish in the top 15 to really annul any gain by Declan Lonergan.
And Declan from Ireland, one of the top European riders competing here, and despite being down by 35 points, he still thinks he's in a good shot to win this.
Pretty much so. I mean, it's a very big race, and we've got the best riders in the world here, and it's the final race of the year, so it'd be really, really nice to win it overall, and you know, I'm certainly going to try and do it.
Declan definitely giving his best today as the peloton continues to try and track him down before the end of this race. And while they do that, we are going to take a short break, but we will return to more of the Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic from Kapiolani Park, just outside of Honolulu, right after this. Welcome back to the Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. We are near the end of the U.S. Sprint Criterium. Our current leader, Arvis Piziks from Latvia, being followed closely behind by Mark McRae of Great Britain, and truly a great race thus far.
McRae has got his wheel. McRae, who won the stage number 2, that wonderful long road race stage, probably the best win of his career. And now he's back up to the leading group, which he's done by a wonderful chase back, bringing up, though, a dangerous man in Marty Jemison, who's leaving the amateur ranks after this race to be a top professional with the Dutch Word Perfect team. Crow never afraid to set the pace, but in fact it's George Hincapie, I think, who's dragging the race along behind, because the American in this front group is not working. And Hincapie is going to close this down. And you could see the way George came around that bend there. His class showed, because he was so much faster around the corner than some members of that group, that he's virtually sat up to wait for them all to regroup. And now immediately an attack by Jemison, and that's a clever move.
So Marty Jemison is our new leader as he comes around the hairpin turn, and it looks like Arvis Piziks goes down.
He overcooked it on the corner, and that's him out of it now, because Mark McRae saw it and avoided it, and so too, thankfully, did everybody else. He might well get back in the race at the back of the field. He won't be allowed to lap out, I'm pretty sure of that now at this stage of the race. And now the cheers are up there now for the United States. And look at this now, Marty Jemison about to wave farewell to the amateur. I think if he wins this, they'll be glad to see him go, because he's going to be a professional in Holland. And there, the unlucky Latvian rider has gone, and he is out of it. What a sad end to his visit here to the South Pacific. But now this rider is going to give it his all over the final lap. And it could be a fairy tale result for the United States, this. Not only a win for the stage, but a win overall in the first ever Tour of Hawaii.
And a great way for Marty Jemison to round out his amateur career as he moves on to the pro ranks. He hails from Salt Lake City, Utah, very well conditioned as he continues to gear down, preparing for this final lap. The crowd is out. Most of them, I'm sure, are pushing for the American to win it, but he's still got 1 lap to go, and there's a lot of riders that could catch him.
The reaction is coming, and it's coming from the Dutch riders who've done so much today to try and win this. They've tried just about every move they know, but they've been marked out of it. So now we're into the final lap of the circuit, and this final kilometre is going to seem an awful long way, but look at the close down is coming. This is Servais Knaven, who's closing down very rapidly indeed. And Knaven is shutting it down on Jemison. And Jemison is about to be caught by Servais Knaven. And he knows it, he's waiting. Now Knaven, just like Jemison, is also turning pro at the end of the season. And the Latvian rider who's come up here. And this is Ozers, I think it's Kaspars Ozers who's joined him at the front. So we've got Kaspars Ozers, but the Servais Knaven, who has been so determined today to try and get the win he wanted to say farewell to the amateurs, is now finding his legs. The legs next year he hopes will take him to a ride in the Tour de France. But Kaspars Ozers has got him, and so too is Jemison, somehow finding the strength to hang on. Half a lap to go, about 500 or 600 metres if that. And look at this now. Knaven is not going to wait to see if Kaspars Ozers has the ability. The Latvian are going for back-to-back stage wins here. They won the ride up the mountain. They've come down the mountain to Waikiki Beach, and now they're trying to win here as well. And I think, you know, Knaven is doing the wrong thing here. He's going to give this to Ozers if he keeps this up. Ozers is riding in his slipstream. That will mean a 30% saving of energy. He's going now early. He's going now early, and on the right it's Ozers, but Knaven is so determined. He kicks again, Knaven. This is going to be a tremendous finish. And I think he went, you know, to the Dutchman right on the line. It was difficult, in fact, to see exactly where the line was, but it looked to me as though, in fact, the victory went to Servais Knaven, but it will go to the photo.
The judges will review the slow motion and the photo to determine who is the winner if possible. But there's a lot of feeling that Kaspars Ozers might have won it at the very end. Even now, we stop frame right there at the finish line. It is tough to tell. The judges definitely have their work cut out for them. Truly a great race, a great finish by both competitors, regardless of who wins. So the unofficial results, and we want to stress unofficial: Servais Knaven of Holland, Kaspars Ozers, Rob McEwen, Scott Mercer, and Robert Baranowski. On the team results, we can tell you that USA #2 is the overall team champion, followed by Poland and Latvia. And we'll be back with the official result right after this. The Bank of America Tour of Hawaii has been brought to you by Bank of America and by Continental Airlines. One airline can make a difference. And by US Sprint. Be there now. Welcome back to the conclusion of the first ever Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic. We have just concluded the fourth and final stage, that being the U.S. Sprint Criterium. Todd Harris along with Phil Liggett, and this was the scene of it all right there. Too close to call. It is unofficial, but Servais Knaven and Kaspars Ozers went down to the wire. Phil Liggett is with our temporary second-place finisher.
Servais, you rode so hard to say goodbye to the amateur ranks today with a victory, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to win today, but yeah, Kaspars Ozers is very fast in the sprint, and I thought I would be second or first, and I keep on riding, and yeah, now I'm second. I'm a little bit disappointed, but our second place is nice too.
Nice to go out with a good one.
Yeah, of course, and maybe go further the same in next year as a professional.
Still, things remain unofficial as we stand by to wait for the judge's decision. Phil Liggett is standing by with our other first-place contender.
Kaspars, when you were finishing today, did you believe you had won the race?
Yes, I'm very lucky. I win today.
Now, this is your first victory in the Pacific Islands.
Yes, this is my first victory. Latvia team now win another stage in Australia, but in Hawaii, with the second victory from Latvia team.
But this is a very good Latvian team, isn't it? Probably the best you have.
Yes, yes. Maybe we have two young riders. He's staying at home. He have a long season, and now coming here. It's hard from young riders as a long season.
Well, finally, Jom, what do you think of the island of Hawaii?
Oh, it's a beautiful island. Fantastic, fantastic island. I like ocean and very nice areas. Very, very nice island.
Will you come back next year?
Oh, yes, maybe yes. You ask me, I come.
So it's victory for some, but for others like Declan Lonigan, who broke a frame, not such a great day. As we look to our leaderboard, the official result in the criterium: Servais Knaven and Kaspars Ozers do tie. Both receive 38 points. And our overall leaderboard looks like this: Scott Mercer, followed by Tomasz Brozyna and Matt Kashara of the United States.
Well, at the end of 4 stages of racing, the victory has gone to the United States. Scott, it must have been a very tough ride today for you, though.
Yeah, it was kind of stressful trying to ride the wave as everybody was surging around the whole race, but we managed to stay up there and you know, get a good placing and keep the final lead.
But you always kept tactically a good position, but what was the tactics of the Polish riders, because they were always on the attack today?
Well, Brozyna was, you know, attacked midway through the race and got away and kind of worried us a little bit, but George Hincapie chased him down, and from then on I just stayed glued to his wheel till 5 to go, and then I knew I could hold my own.
No bad moments?
Not really. There's a Latvian that crashed over here with about 3 to go, and there's no free laps, so I was mainly worried about, you know, keeping the rubber down and you know, and kind of balancing that with a good finishing position.
You've won a few $1,000s, Scott. What are you going to do with it?
Well, I guess not work this winter.
That's great. Scott, thanks very much indeed. Okay, let's go back to Todd.
Thank you, Phil, and that will conclude this first Bank of America Tour of Hawaii Cycle Classic, a very exciting tour. Our overall winner from the United States, Scott Mercer, and congratulations to our overall team champions. So, for Phil Liggett, I'm Todd Harris, saying aloha from Hawaii.